So far in this Touring Sportster build, yeah, I know that sounds a little bit oxymoronic, but it's what I have, it's what I want to do. We're making the best of our situations with our skill set and cash flow. So far, we have tackled mechanical issues. I replaced the motor mounts on the end and worked on the carburation of it. We've tackled ergonomics to make it more comfortable by raising up the handlebars a little bit, working on some of the cabling and stuff like that. We've tackled electronics because I had to relocate the turn signals farther back in order to fit future saddlebags, and we also added a charging port on the back so that I can charge all my electronics so I can work on the road without draining the battery, because they will work off of the accessory power of the bike itself, so they aren't charging when the key is off. This video, and in fact the next two videos, we are tackling the touring aspect, the ability to carry tents, electronics, tools, all that kind of stuff out on the road so I can spend months on end if I want to, traveling around the country inexpensively. And to do that when we are going to be stepping so far out of my comfort zone in building, in that we are going to build a parcel tray and a sissy bar to accommodate two stacks of equipment. Now there are store-bought solutions out there. When I bought the bike, it actually came with this quick release luggage rack that fit behind the passenger in place of the fit behind the driver in place of the passenger seat. Now, this is a joke. This is a accessory that looks like a luggage rack, but really it's the size of my hand. I'm not fitting much on this. This is pure cosmetic. I think this is idiotic. I don't know why they sell it. The only reason why I have it, it came with the bike because I bought the bike used. For the past 16,000 miles, I've been using this, and it fits in the same two spots that those mount, behind the passenger seat, supposedly the passenger back right there. The cheapest backrest I could find, and I bought a top loader backpack. I've literally tied the back straps to the tow rack, and this has been my storage for the past 16,000 miles. And I can carry two 12-packs in this one. I can carry milk jugs. This has allowed me to work the bike as a daily driver. It turned that toy into something that is useful for me. But here's the thing. I've never liked this. I've always wanted what I saw in the old magazines from the 50s, 60s, 70s, when these bikes came out, and they were the urban runabout. They were the sporty thing. They were the thing you could use to get here and there, go to the grocery store, use their errands and stuff like that. The original purpose of the bike, and they had luggage racks that were useful. I think they called them parcel trays. Here's a whole example of them. Notice they took up the entire passenger seat that extended almost back to the taillight. You could put a large milk crate on it or whatever you wanted and actually use it for storage instead of this cosmetic wannabe. Those are what I want to build. Now to accomplish that task, I went and bought 3 sticks of metal. I think this is a 1/2-inch bar. It might be 3. I kind of forget. I bought it off of the side, how it looks size. I also bought a 1-inch stick of, I think it's a 1/4 inch by 1 inch, and then a 1.5 inch of the same thing. You had to buy these in 20-foot sticks when you buy it from the professional places. But all this metal only cost me $60. So I might be able to build my luggage rack and sissy bar for less than $75, considering some accessory stuff I'll probably have to do. I also have some metal that I pulled out from my scrapyard from building that trailer over there. I'm just going to use these for layout aids. So to restate, my goals is to build 2 things. A very large parcel tray that I can use in my day in, day out use. Maybe put something like a top box or a shop-made milk crate on the back for hauling my groceries around or whatever errands I want daily. And then to have a sissy bar that I can attach whenever I'm going camping so that I can put my tent and all that kind of stuff on one side of it and other stuff on the other side. So in a sense, have 2 stacks anchored to it so I don't lose anything on the road. here are the constraints I have. I am going to be using saddlebags on the side for extra storage. So in addition to the sissy bar, I want to have some saddlebag supports attached to it. So as I remove the sissy bar, the supports come with it. As far as the parcel tray, I would like to have extend a little bit past my license plate to have a good sized parcel tray. My back is right here, so I would never be touching it if it's over here. But I also need to be able to get to my screw for undoing the seat, because you end up undoing that quite a bit. And that parcel tray has to be mounted to this bar right here. Now this is on all Sportsters, but normally you have a little chrome cover or a black cover over it to make it look good. I don't think it looks too bad, and then everything's black back here, so I just left my chrome cover off, and it gives me access to 4 bolt holes, okay? This one right here was what my turn signals were attached to earlier, and the reason why I couldn't use saddlebags with it, because they were right in the way. But the saddlebag supports are a little bit wider than these 2 mounts right here. So I've got to design something to that effect to make it work there. I don't know if I will use this one or if I will just leave the bolt there and cut it off to help further support the rear fender. I don't know if I can use this screw right here, which is the screw used if you had a passenger seat. And I don't know how high I need to make the parcel tray, nor how wide. Those are all decisions I need to make before welding it all together. And if y'all are coming over from my woodworking channel, you know I don't plan my designs. I work on the go. I mean, I'm notorious for that. The results probably would be better if I got on CAD and stuff like that, but most of my plans are on the back of a napkin or more likely the chalkboard in my shop. So my thinking is the first thing I want to do is build the tray itself, and I'll worry about the supports later on. So my initial thought is lengthwise, I'm going to make it from the middle of this screw back to the rear fender, so it will protrude past the license plate a little bit, and with the sides being 1.5 inches, that will be about level with my seat. Widthwise, I'm looking at my frame right here, because that seems to flow back and line up about with the turn signal, mid-turn signals in back, and it's not quite wider than the saddle. So I think that's my width. So out of frame, I'm going to go cut up a piece of plywood and see if I like the way that looks. So at 12 inches wide by 16 inches, it sits about like that right there. Kind of comes around. Yeah, looking kind of like a CT70, but I mean, function-wise, that's kind of what I want. So I'm going to have to fix that center section right there. I have to do some kind of circle right there so I can get to that screw, and maybe I will repeat that curvature on the edges around it somehow. Maybe soften the back edges will make it look a little bit more professional. So I think that's the shape I want. So I think the best plan of action is to use this as a template, because this is the exterior diameter of the general shape I want. And I will cut this up and put it on the outside so that the steel that I'm going to be using will push up on the inside, and I can bend one piece all the way around to the shape I want. At least that's what I think I can do. Again, this is well beyond my grasp of expertise. And FYI, if you want to see how I built this entire welding table for less than $300, that's over on my woodworking channel, even though it is metal. Okay, earlier I mentioned the scrap stuff that I was going to be using as layout guides. I think what I need is 3 circles, little blank pieces like that. One of them I'm actually going to use in the piece, and then I need 10 or 12 of the square ones, just small little sections. So right now I'm just going to cut those up and prep them. and that one will go right there. So next step, I need to measure all the way around plus this side. So I'm getting twice of these. So that's 12, 24, 36, plus 16 and 16, 32, 36. So that would be 68. So we'll real quickly cut that off. A little bit to use as a spacer. And before I go too much further, I want to set parameters for this right here. So I'm taking a Sharpie, getting right on the edge and just marking all the way around so that at least I can reset this if anything goes wrong. So there we go. So now I need to go ahead and get all suited up for welding, and I'm going to start a process of tacking parts down and then bending this bar around it with heat. I've been told that if you heat up metal, it will only bend at a spot that is red hot and not all the way around. And that's the principle I'm kind of counting on. Fingers crossed. So, you remember at the beginning of this video how I said that this part I was going so far out of my comfort zone. I really didn't know what I was doing. I was winging it. I'm doing what made sense to me, but probably we will be watching this for its entertainment value and not its educational value. Well, y'all are now watching me try to figure out a heating jig so I can bend metal around it by heating up corners and doing it. And I'm doing that by taking really thick pieces of metal and tacking them onto an even thicker piece of metal and thinking that I can heat up a thin piece of metal touching them. All of y'all out there that know anything about metalworking are now laughing their asses off. Or you're wondering what kind of heat source is he going to be using? And when I pull out the little blue bottles of propane and start going after it, and I'm speeding this up 1,000 times, and notice the metal is not changing color, you are laughing at me. And I fully deserve it. Even picking up the yellow bottle, which is supposedly hotter, but in hindsight, not that much hotter, it isn't working at all. So I went out and I called a lifeline. Somebody that actually knows what they're doing in metalworking, and they basically told me that I really need to use an oxyacetylene torch to heat up this kind of metal to bend it in this kind of situation. Unfortunately, I don't have the $400 to $600 to go out and buy the kit and then get the gas for that to fill up the tanks to do the process. He was telling me I'd be better off to rent the tanks at signing a contract for $25 a month, which that blows my budget way out of the range. So I did a little bit of research, and evidently the yellow bottles, you can add oxygen to them, and it becomes a MAP Pro. It's not MAP gas, it's MAP Pro. Somewhat oxyacetylene. Not quite as hot, but this kit right here that offers the torches and all that kind of stuff to make it work was a little bit over $120 when I got 2 extra oxygen tanks, because everyone told me that the oxygen tanks don't last very long. That puts my project up to around $200 in materials and stuff like that, which I think is still a value for what we're doing. But if this doesn't work, we're just going to have to change the design and do something else. Now, this is one of those times where I kind of hate a lot of marketing people, because there was nobody out there that was really telling me. I know this isn't equivalent to oxyacetylene as far as the heat it can produce. I just need to get it hot enough to make this metal red. And I believe this would do it, because adding oxygen to this flame, the MAP, and when I say MAP, it's not MAP gas, it's MAP, not MAPP. Supposedly it will boost it up 1,000 to 1,500 degrees above what it was just naturally. So that, I think, will get me there. This is actually for brazing, which is melting metal and cutting, but all I want to do is get it hot. And wouldn't you know it, no instructions. Now, the complaints I've heard online about this stuff is it is not cost effective if you're doing a lot, but really I can't justify the expense of an oxyacetylene right now for just one project, and I probably won't do anything like this again for, years away. And also that the oxygen's dependent upon how you have your flame set, it might only be good for 4 to 10 minutes of actual use, which is why I bought some extra ones. Whereas the actual gas itself, you could probably go for 30 to 40 minutes of use. Oh, this backwards threading feels so weird. The other big complaint I heard online was that this kind of cheap setup is kind of hard to get the flame just perfectly, and it'll sputter out sometimes, especially if you're in a windy environment, which I think a storm's about to blow through and the wind is picking up, so I might have to do this tomorrow. But the manufacturer says that absolutely positively when you light this thing, you always start with the gas, the MAP, get that flame going, and then slowly add oxygen. And when you turn it off, slowly turn the oxygen off, and then the MAP gas. So it's MAP, oxygen, oxygen, MAP. And that should do it. What the instruction said is to get the MAP gas going to a yellow flame, but the flame is touching here. It's not so powerful that it's extending out a little bit. And then slowly add in oxygen until you get about 1/4 of an inch of a blue tip right there, and that's going to be our hottest setting. So, wish me luck. Looks like storm wind coming in. It keeps blowing it out. Been a frustrating day. It took me going to 4 different stores to find that thing already. And money I didn't want to spend. But it'll be a success. We'll just try it out tomorrow. Okay, day 3 of trying to get the first bend in metal. Wish me luck. Damn it, I got so excited I forgot to turn the camera on. But what happened was, ooh, that's still hot. I can feel it right there. I never got it to change color. But after a while, I just kind of got frustrated. And I just started bending it myself, and it did bend in that one spot. But there might be a little bit of spring back, but I'm going to let it cool and see about that one. So this torch worked. See, the other portions of it stayed straight, and you could see kind of, because there's a little bit of an air gap there, maybe that's why it was able to heat up without getting too heat sunk with the other metal. But it seemed to work. Notice that the bend is tighter up top than it is down bottom. I think that's just because I spent more time with the heat gun on the top section. We'll try over there, and I'll try and film that better. Now this side is going to be a little bit different in that I'm not going to have a bend in one spot. So basically I'm just going to start heating and kind of work my way down and just slowly bend it as I go around. Though everybody was right, this was a little bit difficult to get right. It seems like the MAP gas, the knob, you just barely cracked, not much at all. Then got the flame going. See, that was just like 1/2 millimeter, so I need, okay, come down, so it's just touching. And then it took like a whole turn of the oxygen to get it started, but once it got started, it was like 1/2 millimeter difference. And I did have problems with the wind blowing it out a few times last time. So I'm just slowly turning the oxygen on. It's an arm length away, so just trying to be safe. It's kind of anticlimactic waiting for the oxygen to kick in. I don't know what the black smoke means though. It's burning dirty, but still turning, still turning. And I'm going to start putting pressure almost immediately, just a little bit. And when I can see that it's just bending in one spot, I'll know we're okay. I wish I could film from this side because you can really see the metal is kind of changing colors a little bit. Going a lot more silver. There we go. I can see it starting to bend. It's hinging at the spot I'm putting the flame. And it is turning slightly orange too, which I think is good. You can kind of tell when it wants to bend. Just a little bit of finger pressure and it's moving over. But I've got a little bit, not quite doing what I expected. Okay, if you look right here, there's a little bit of a curve right there. I'm going to continue to heat on this. I think I might want to add a few more tacks to that. Maybe I can hit it with a hammer to get that bend more consistent with this pipe right here. Otherwise, that just might be what I end up with. Oh yeah, you can see it relaxing and straightening out right there. That didn't do anything. I think that's pretty good. Not perfect because there's a little bit of a gap right there, but best I could do. And the more I heated over here, this got really straight. So that little bit of spring action that caused from here was taken care of there. And I bet if I take this off, just like the other side, it's probably not going to, that didn't spring back much at all. Pretty happy with that. So let's try doing this one in fast forward and maybe it'll be more climactic. So that bend went pretty well. I will tell you, I'm liking these tighter bends. They're just more to my skill level. Doing that gradual curve, neither one of those got matched up, and that one was even worse, the one I did in fast motion. Because I think if I go back, if I start out heating and going around the corner, it starts out even, but at some point in time, I end up going back and it created a spot that was hotter than the rest, so it hinged out and came away from the pipe. So it's not, I think that's why it's not perfectly round, was because I wasn't doing a good job keeping the heat moving at a constant pace. Whereas when it's just a hinge point, no big deal. I will tell you, there's no spring back on these. The one issue I am having right now, and I'm trying to figure out, is this one is a little bit higher than this one, and I'm going to be welding in one of those round pieces right there so that I can create the interior arc. So I need them to be in the same level, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that now. It might just be that whenever it cools off, I take it out of the form. I can just heat this and twist it a little bit and it'll work out just fine. Or maybe it's just something I don't worry about. Probably I should just not worry about it. I'm overthinking. So the rest of assembling this parcel tray top is just going to be, cutting pieces to length, maybe doing a little bit of prep work so they'll paint easier, removing the rust, that kind of stuff, and some minor shaping of the corners, and then welding it all together. So how about a quick montage so that we can get on to actually mounting this to the bike. So there's the rack. Is it perfect? Oh, hell no. And it might be a little... weight-wise, it feels heavy to me, but I remember back when I was selling Hondas, luggage racks are just heavy. The only thing I think I could have done to make it lighter would have gone with thinner metal. This is 3/16, but who knows. Design-wise, I put on 1.5 inches on the sides. Then I made a 1.5 inch gap for either side. Then I put a 1 inch, so it stair steps down on both sides. Then I put a 1 inch in the middle, and I split the difference with a set of bars for the looks wise. I did feel that these 1 inchers were a little bit kind of wobbly, so on the back side of them, I put on some bracing. I did not go all the way across because I plan on putting screw holes here and here, so that I can mount stuff in the future. Mounting the sissy bar, I'm going to be putting holes in here, and I'll weld on some nuts on the back to secure them. But to mount the actual rack itself, I'm kind of going to steal the idea from here. This rack, basically, it had just a little spacer right here for the nuts to go through, and that mounted to the bike itself. And then they welded this bars on top of it. So I'm going to use the same thing, except I'm going to have to get a little bit wider steel spacers. And I'll probably use these exact nuts or ones very similar to that to mount to the bike. And then from there, use the ideas seen in the old vintage parcel trays, where the front bar kind of went forward a little bit and then got welded up underneath, and the back bar kind of arced all the way around and welded up underneath. And I will weld those to the outside two pieces to get the spacing on that. I'm going to have to figure out how to bend the tubing I bought, but that'll be something for the future. Right now, I'm just going to go up to the hardware store and see if I can find some spacers that will fit these exact size nuts, bolts and nuts, and go from there. So I went to the store and I found 4 washers, Fits this right here, though. These are 1-inchers, which I want a little bit extra room there. So I'm going to have to get a little bit longer screws, but that shouldn't be that big a deal. My problem is that these are coated with nickel, and nickel is something you cannot weld against. It will give you very poisonous fumes. So a trick that I learned in the woodworking realm is that you can take nickel coated stuff, and if you just let it soak in vinegar, vinegar will eat away the nickel and give you the raw steel. And a lot of times I would use this trick with nuts and bolts to give me something more vintage looking, because they really didn't start making nuts and bolts shiny until, you know, the past century and stuff like that. So I let that sit overnight. Now I end up with raw steel that I can weld against. Okay, it's now been 48 hours, and you can see, you know, the vinegar is very dirty. So pour it out, and you just end up with black steel. You know, you can kind of clean it up, but this will be perfect for welding against, and I won't have to worry about any noxious fumes. But you can see how black it gets. That's what I meant by turning hardware like hinges and nuts and bolts to a vintage look. Just looks like old steel. Now 48 hours is longer than I normally do it, just because I'm kind of hitting a roadblock mentally of figuring out how to get the final kind of attachment points, because these little things are what I'm going to weld the bars to, and the screws obviously go against it. And I know that I can bend stuff in a straight line, you know, have one come up this way, or maybe just straight up. And then this one right here come back and around and up, and that will create, what you don't want is 2 parallel lines, because that'll cause easy vibration. You want these to be in tension, so if one is moving the one way, the other is kind of counteracting it. So my big problem is not in this direction, it's in this direction, because as you can see, this is farther apart than this. It kind of tapers that back that way. So not only do I have to worry about this curve right here, I also need to worry about how much to curve it in. So a 1-inch spacer right here, and the maximum width is on the outside. I just have to come up a little bit to get on the inside rail. But on this side right here, I might have to come a little bit farther. I don't know yet. That's kind of, I don't know how to lay this out as of yet, but I'm kind of now to the point where I say, maybe just start and figure out as we go. Then on the back, I could come out a little bit and then take a 45-degree and come towards the back of this fender right here. And the other benefit of this setup would be I really wouldn't have to worry about bending them this way or that way on either side, because the front one, it's just an arch over, so it doesn't matter where it contacts it up front. And then on the back, it's just going to be hitting this back corner. So taking measurements from the bottom of the screw, that is 7 inches. And from the bottom of the screw up to, let's say, the midpoint of the bar, and that is 6 inches. 7 inches, 6 inches. And I'll want to add, you know, that 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch on both sides to raise it up a little bit more on top of the fender. And on the front section, you know, I have that little circle right there. So instead of just making an arch all the way across, why don't I just weld it up kind of like that and not worry about it? Just do 2 pieces instead of 1 big piece. It'd probably make life a lot easier. So with that kind of layout, even though it's very rough, well, if I do both sides off the same jig, even if they're a little bit off, no big deal, right? So that right there, tack these down, there's my bending jig. And you know something? I believe all 4 pieces are the same exact jig now. This might even work out better. So my frustration level yesterday got kind of high, mainly because of my own idiocy, but I did find that the 5/8 inch rod that I had hoped to use, it was just too thick for that small flame to actually heat up to orange red hot enough to bend it. I mean, it got so bad that even the tacks I had over here, I broke my jig getting it up. And I also learned that if you leave the little oxygen bottles plugged into the jig, that overnight they will empty themselves. There's a small leak right there, and that cost me 2 balls. I bought another one today. I also went and picked up a 3/8 inch rod, which I looked online. That's more than strong enough. I just think it looks a little bit thin, but it'll work, and I believe that that torch is good enough to heat this up to a point where it will bend. I was kind of hoping to use the 5/8 for the sissy bar, because that's all we really need, but I'll have to figure something else out there. So let's get this all set up again, cut this 3/8 down to 16-inch bars, and bend 4 at 45 degrees so that we can cut them to length for the various parts on this rack mount. And there's 4. Now just cut them to length. So these are left long, so I now just come down here, just kind of get it as low as I want to get it to the fender right there. And then I'm going to mark the top. And that'll be my first cut. But if I do that one, both of them are going to be anchoring more towards that circle. So maybe if I bring it up higher, it'll anchor farther out to the side. And that's probably the wiser decision. So I guess my first cut, I will guess to be right there. So right now I have my grinder set up. So this is a flat reference and this is 90 degrees to that. So if I just simply put my battery down, I can hinge down and I can get a pretty plumb cut. The other aspect is I don't want to change this angle right here. So if I use a square, line this up like that, that way I can eyeball all the way down here to get this thing somewhat plumb and then to make my cut. So next I need to weld this on here. Now these are, as you can see, a little bit higher, and I want to make sure I get this in the dead center. So Outside diameter of this is 5/8. This should be 3/8. So I need some kind of shim of 1/8 to raise it up, so when I can just lay it down and weld it like that and get it in the dead center. So I measured out 3 rulers and 5 wraps of tape, and I have a perfect 1/8. So there's my shim to get it up to the middle of the spacer. So I put a brass spacer that I use for my machine setup in my woodworking shop on the back side, so that way it won't be tilted. So it's 1/8 of an inch up here, 1/8 of an inch down here. I've got this set up parallel to the face of my vise so that I can use a square to make sure that I keep the brace, the spacer just perfect, and I'm eyeballing the middle. So I think that's everything. Let's tack it up. Well, I ain't perfect, but I think that'll work. A little sanding on the grinder, clean it up, and nobody will know a hack did it, right? So I have the half of the fronts. Now I just need to cut them to whatever length I'm going to do whenever I weld it up. Hold off on that for a second. So now I can mount it to the bike on the front. So all that's left right here is put it on, tack it to the rack, and then I'll cut and shape it so it looks right. I've left these very long just to make that easier. So the length of this rack is behind my license plate. So I just need to make sure that I get the mounting point, you know, a little bit above the license plate, but behind it. So I'm basically going to repeat the same exact steps I did for getting this angle, except this time it's going to be like that, and it's going to be quite a bit shorter. So that right there is where I will be attaching the circle, but we don't need to film all that again. So now there are the 2 back mounts. So we got front and back mounts. I now just need to prep my bike by pulling the battery out and taking the seat off and stuff like that so that I can weld on it without damaging the electronics. So I went and bought about a $12, $16 worth of hardware. So I think this puts my total on the project to, you know, somewhere around 230, maybe 240 bucks. Little wave washers, you know, nuts, that kind of stuff. And that's in place of the hardware that came off of the old sissy bar. I need to reuse this piece right here because that's what keeps this one from stopping, but the other one I can just use a nut. I couldn't find the right size screw for the fronts, so I'm going to put these on and then measure what's ever left over after I'm done to cut off. So the fronts are going to get a bolt, a washer, then the contraption, another washer, then on the inside it will have a washer, a spring wave washer, and finally a nut. Right now I've got my bike. I've taken the battery out, so hopefully no electricity will go to any of the electronics on it. I've got it up on a bike stand, and if I drop this level right here, it's touching here and here on both sides of the frame. Now this is not plumb, but the bubble is touching that line, so as long as I can get the bubble in the same spot here and on the rack, I know that it'll be lined up this way. And this right here is going to be close to the center of the little circle to get it lined up this way and this way. So hopefully it'll work out. So I got the flat washer, wave washer on back. This screw goes in, and I'm just doing them finger tight now. So there's the front brace. So with those up, I'm going to use a towel again Use a towel for the thickness off the fender that I want to get it. Then kind of thickness above the license plate that probably ought to be. Use the screw as a centering point. My eyeballs to line it left and right. And then the level to get it right. And you know, judging from that, I need to flip these around. Yeah, that's more the design I was thinking about. I'm looking here and seeing that angle. And if I just lift this up maybe an inch more, I could put this on the inside and it'd probably look a little bit cleaner. And I'd need to raise it up so that the screw would be underneath it instead of wedged there. Which means if I'm going to be raising that up a ½ inch, I can cut this off right about there at that angle and then duplicate it on the other side, and that'll give me a little bit of wiggle room. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. So high stress, I've got some thoroughly wet towels to hopefully protect the bike. Attach the ground as close as I can to where I'm going to be welding. We double check everything. And we squeeze the gun and hope for the best. Oh, those are ugly tacks. I might have to grind a little bit right there to be able to get this in and out. I'm like 2 millimeters too low. Oh well. The back, because it's already hinged now on that one, so I can lift it up, I just kind of got it to the level point where I wanted it. And then I can use a screw and just go to the outside of it and kind of get it roughly where I want it to be. Mark it, cut it off, tack it on, and then head back to the bench to finish welding. So there we go. A heavy-duty luggage rack that makes my bike look like the bastard love child between a Honda Trail 90 and a Sportster. Now, I'll grant you it's not the best looking thing in the world, but it works, and my welds I ground them down pretty well. I'm going to leave it raw for now because I'm about to build the sissy bar and the saddlebag supports, and might as well just, you know, clean everything up and paint it at the same time. But there we go. I'm an absolute noob at metalworking, so if I can do something like this, I'm sure you can whip something out too. And even if all you're doing is drilling holes, bending, and bolting stuff together, I can see how you could do this easily with just those skills and no welding whatsoever. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. Come back next time for that sissy bar build. And remember, get out there for a motorcycle ride.